Sometimes you hear about something and it feels like a potential game changer.
Mm.
That's kind of how I felt reading these recent reports about a new weapon China's apparently developing, a high-power microwave gun.
Right. HPM. That definitely sounds like something out of science fiction, doesn't it?
Totally. But the buzz is this could have, pretty serious real-world consequences.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to dig into here. Our kind of mission for this deep dive is to really unpack what this reported HPM weapon is, how it supposedly works, and why it might be such a big deal based on these military reports we've seen. It's still early days, information is emerging, but yeah, it's intriguing.
Right, exactly. We don't want to just glance at the headline. We want to get into the nuts and bolts of the tech, what makes it tick, or I guess what makes it zap.
Zapped is a good word for it.
So, okay, first things first. What is a high-power microwave weapon? Fundamentally, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so think about your microwave oven at home, right? It uses microwaves to heat food. Now, imagine taking that same type of energy, but amplifying it massively,
Yeah.
like incredibly powerful, and then focusing it into a beam.
Okay.
That's basically the idea. An HPM weapon shoots these really intense, focused beams of microwave energy.
And the goal isn't reheating leftovers, I take it.
Yeah, no. The goal is to mess with electronics. The energy beam is meant to disrupt or even totally fry the electronic components inside a target.
So targets like?
Think drones, missiles, aircraft,
Yeah.
even potentially low-orbit satellites.
Okay.
Anything with sensitive electronics could be vulnerable. The intense microwave burst basically overloads the circuits. Malfunction, burnout. That's the aim.
Got it. So it's like an invisible electronic punch, a massive surge hitting delicate systems.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah.
And the reports also mention something about it firing with no error or damage. What's that about? Does that refer to the weapon itself?
That's how it reads, yes.
Yeah.
It likely points to the weapon's own durability and reliability, unlike some conventional guns that wear down with rapid fire.
Right. Barrels overheating, parts failing.
Exactly. This claim suggests a really robust design, something that can fire repeatedly, maintain its performance, its accuracy, without damaging itself in the process. That's a significant engineering feat, if true.
Okay, so reliable, powerful. Let's dig into some of the specific capabilities mentioned in these reports. They describe it as being almost the size of a Gatling gun.
That comparison paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. Rapid fire, maybe?
Yeah.
And compact-ish?
That's the implication. A Gatling gun suggests a high rate of fire, and putting HPM tech into a form factor that size hints at some real advances in, well, miniaturization and power management.
And then there's the claim about its durability, very high resistance to damage from firing again and again.
Yeah, that links back to the no error damage point. Building on that Gatling gun image, if it can fire rapidly and withstand the stress of generating these incredibly powerful microwave pulses over and over,
That's tough to do.
extremely tough. It suggests they've tackled some major engineering hurdles related to heat, stress, and component longevity.
And the firing rate itself, the numbers are kind of staggering. Reports mention 10 to 30 pulses per second.
Per second, yeah, and each pulse supposedly packing hundreds of megawatts of power.
Hundreds of megawatts per pulse.
That's the claim. All driven by what's described as a 3 gigawatt pulsed current. These are very big numbers.
No kidding. What does that kind of pulse rate and power actually mean in practice if those numbers are even close to accurate?
Well, if they are, it signifies a pretty massive leap in HPM tech. Firing that many high-energy pulses every second gives you options. You could potentially engage multiple targets very quickly.
Like a swarm of drones.
Exactly. Or you could pour sustained energy onto one really tough, hardened target to overwhelm its defenses. The power levels, hundreds of megawatts, suggest a serious ability to disable or destroy electronics. It really paints a picture of a very potent, very fast electronic attack capability.
Okay, this is starting to sound seriously potent. Now, one of the most fascinating bits in the reports, for me anyway, was how they supposedly solved the vacuum problem. Why do these things typically need a vacuum?
Right, so traditionally, HPM devices, the kind that generate these really high powers they often need to operate in a vacuum.
Why is that?
It's about efficiency and self-preservation. If those super powerful microwaves travel through air, they can interact with the air molecules. That interaction can actually cause the air to ionize, to break down, which does two bad things. One, it saps energy from the microwave beam, making it weaker. And two, that breakdown can actually damage the sensitive internal parts of the weapon itself.
Okay, so the vacuum prevents the beam from fizzling out and stops it from, like, short-circuiting itself in the air inside.
Essentially, yes, it allows for maximum power delivery and protects the device.
And the old way of doing that involved pumps.
Yeah.
External pumps.
Yeah, the conventional approach often uses external vacuum pumps, constantly working to suck the air out and maintain that near-perfect vacuum inside.
Which sounds bulky and probably needs power.
Exactly. Those pumps add weight, size, complexity. They need their own power source. It makes the whole weapon system less mobile, harder to deploy quickly, especially on a battlefield.
But China, according to these reports, has developed an independent vacuum system. How did they get around needing those big external pumps? This feels like a really key innovation.
It really does. This is where the reports get quite specific and, frankly, pretty impressive if accurate. They talk about a major breakthrough in something called ceramic metal welding.
Ceramic metal welding.
Okay.
Think about sealing something really well, like hermetically sealed. This advanced welding technique, reportedly developed by the Xi'an Institute.
Aren't they involved in nuclear weapons research too?
That's right, which tells you the level of materials science expertise we're potentially talking about. This welding allows them to create incredibly strong, leak-proof seals between the ceramic and metal parts inside the HPM device.
Ah, so unlike, say, rubber seals that might degrade or leak over time? Precisely. Rubber O-rings and similar seals can break down, especially under the stress and heat of repeated high-power operation.
Right.
They develop tiny leaks, the vacuum degrades. This ceramic metal welding apparently creates a much more permanent, robust seal, no leaks.
So better seals are step one for this independent system, but there's more to it, right? How do they keep the vacuum during firing? Doesn't the weapon itself release gas?
Good question. Yes, intense operations like firing high-power microwaves can cause materials inside the device to outgas release tiny amounts of trapped gas molecules.
Right.
So the reports mentioned two other key things. First, the use of special alloy materials inside the weapon structure itself. These materials act like internal vacuum cleaners. They actually absorb stray gas molecules that might get released during firing.
Like a built-in sponge for gas?
Kind of, yeah. It helps actively maintain the vacuum quality even while the weapon is operating.
Okay, that's clever. And then there were these egg pumps, non-evaporable getter pumps.
Right. Non-evaporable getters, or NEGs. These are materials, often alloys the report mentions as zirconium, vanadium iron alloy, that have a strong chemical affinity for common residual gases.
So more gas absorption.
Exactly, but in a more dynamic way. As the weapon fires and maybe releases traces of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, whatever, these NAG pump materials chemically react with those gases and trap them, effectively removing them from the vacuum space. Wow. So you have the super tight seal from the welding, plus these internal alloys and NA pumps continuously cleaning up any stray gas. It's a multi-layered approach to creating and maintaining a high-quality vacuum without external pumps.
That sounds really elegant, actually. An integrated self-sustaining vacuum. That would explain the potential for high power, rapid firing, and durability they're claiming.
It seems like a very plausible connection, yes.
Right.
If they've cracked that vacuum challenge in this way, it could enable a lot of the other reported performance characteristics.
Now, obviously, China isn't alone here. The U.S. is working on HPM too, right? How does their approach stack up, based on what we know?
That's correct. The U.S. has significant HPM programs. The reports we looked at suggest a primary U.S. focus has been on using a different core technology, gallium nitride, or JN, semiconductor.
JN. Okay, how is that different?
One potential major advantage of GaN-based HPM systems is that they can often operate without needing a vacuum. The semiconductor technology itself is just different.
Oh, interesting. So potentially simpler. No need for all that complex vacuum sealing and getter pumps.
Potentially, yes. It could lead to lighter, maybe more compact systems if they can get the power levels up. It's a different technological path towards a similar goal.
But there's a twist, isn't there? Something about gallium exports.
Ah, yes. The geopolitical angle. Gallium, the GaN and GaN, is a critical raw material for making these semiconductors. China happens to be a major global producer and exporter of gallium.
And they've restricted exports recently.
They have imposed restrictions, yes. Which means, depending on stockpiles and alternative sources, it could create, let's say, headwinds for the U.S. and others relying on GaN technology. Securing enough of the raw material might become more challenging or expensive.
So it's not just R&D, it's also about controlling the supply chain for critical materials. Fascinating.
It really highlights how intertwined technology development and global resources are.
And it looks like China isn't putting all its eggs in one basket. The reports suggest they're pursuing both tracks, the vacuum-based system and GaN.
That seems to be the case, yes.
Yeah.
A dual-track approach. They're reportedly mastering this high-power vacuum tube technology and also investing in GaN semiconductor HPMs.
Why do both? What's the strategic thinking there, potentially?
Well, hedging your bets is one aspect, but it could also be about having different tools for different jobs. The vacuum-based system might offer, say, higher peak power or faster firing rates right now, while the GaN systems might eventually offer advantages in size, weight, or cost for certain applications. Having both gives them flexibility and redundancy. Some analysts suggest this dual approach could give them a real edge in developing next-gen weapon system.
An edge. Yeah, you can see how that might play out. Still, we need to remember, as you said, a lot of this is based on emerging reports. There's still some speculation involved.
Absolutely. We have details from these reports, but not the full technical specifications or independent verification.
So, what are the big question marks that still remain? What don't we know about this reported Chinese HPM gun?
I think the single biggest unanswered question, especially thinking about practical battlefield use, is the power source.
Ah, right. Generating gigawatts of pulsed current and hundreds of megawatts of microwave energy. That takes a lot of juice.
A tremendous amount. Where does that power come from in a potentially mobile or tactical system? Is it a massive battery pack?
Right.
A dedicated generator? How big is it? How heavy? What are the logistics involved in keeping it fueled or charged in the field?
Yeah, you can have the most amazing weapon, but if you need a whole power plant to run it and can't move it easily.
Exactly. The practicality of the power source and the overall system integration for real-world deployment, that's probably the biggest unknown right now. The physics might work, the device might work, but can you actually field it effectively?
Okay, that's a crucial point. So let's try to pull this together. What we're hearing from these reports is that China seems to have made some pretty significant strides with a high-power microwave weapon. Key features: rapid fire, high power, potentially very durable. Enabled, it seems, by a really clever internal vacuum system using advanced welding and these special gas-absorbing materials.
That sums up the core technical claims nicely, yes.
And this could give them a serious new capability against things like drones and missiles, maybe even satellites.
Potentially, yes. It represents a possible advantage in the realm of electronic warfare and air missile defense.
So for anyone listening, why does this matter? What's the so what here?
Well, I think the so what is that this offers a glimpse into the future direction of warfare. We could be seeing a shift where directed energy electronic attack becomes increasingly central.
Less about just blowing things up, more about disabling them electronically.
It could certainly play a much bigger role. This development, if the reports are accurate, really underscores that ongoing high-stakes global competition in advanced military tech, breakthroughs in materials, physics, that can lead to capabilities that could genuinely change the strategic landscape.
Absolutely. It definitely leaves you thinking, if this technology is as real and effective as these reports suggest, what are the wider implications strategically, defensively? And, what kind of countermeasures start popping up in response? Because they will. Definitely food for thought.